story of the murders of 16-year-old Davina Baker and 13-year-old Jasmine Baker. The Kumari-Baker family lived in Stretham, Cambridgeshire, England, and consisted of 41-year-old Rekha Kumari-Baker, her husband, businessman David Baker, and their two daughters, 16-year-old Davina Michelle Baker and 13-year-old Jasmine Kelly Baker. Davina was said to be the feisty, outgoing and extroverted one, and Jasmine was the quiet and intellectual one who sometimes felt she lived in her sister's shadow. But despite their differences and their two contrasting personalities, the girls got on together fantastically. Their mother, Rekha, was a pub waitress and hotel worker, and neighbours and acquaintances said that she often kept it to herself. Behind closed doors, however, tension brewed between David and Rebecca, and the couple decided to divorce in 2004. As the relationship further soared, a messy custody dispute began, and Rekha also started having bitter feelings towards her ex-husband's new partner, Katie Cohn. Rekha clearly did not like Katie, and she was concerned that the amount of time the children were spending with her. David said she did not like Katie. There was a lot of friction between them. At home, Rekha also had a very strained relationship with her daughters, and erratic behaviour behind closed doors hinted at a turbulent domestic life. Rekha's inner turmoil seemed so to intensify in the aftermath of her divorce, leading to escalating conflicts and strained interactions with others regarding her daughters. Stephanie Franklin, the vice principal of Impington Village College near Cambridge, where Davina was to pupil, had a series of meetings with Rekha to discuss concerns about Davina. During a meeting in October 2004, Stephanie Franklin remarked how Rekha could be aggressive and dictatorial, and she even witnessed Rekha telling Davina twice that she wished Davina was dead. Stephanie Franklin said, "I said, you don't mean that, Rekha. That's a really extreme thing to say. You are a mother." And she said, "I do mean that." And she turned to Davina and said, "I wish you were dead." That is awful. Like, her daughter is clearly struggling because obviously she's having to be called in her mother, though it's clear her daughter's struggling, and instead her mother just doesn't care. Like, it's like she just can't see. She's never around her with her behaviour. It just seems she's got a lot of hatred towards so many people in her life, and it's like, they're your daughters, like, you should be, you know, helping them, and clearly her daughter's crying out for attention, so, you know, she's just not helping that situation. And to just say that literally and in front of her teacher just means that obviously it just shows how she just does not care. Things back at home did not seem to be much better, and Davina would usually end up spending weekends at her father's house after Rekha threw her out. So she's even throwing her daughter out, which is, it's just sad because it's like, she says how much she doesn't want her daughters to go to her ex-husband's or ex-fiance's new girlfriend to be around her, but it's like, you're making that happen because you keep throwing her out, and like, it's just a bit weird, because it's like, if you were a better mother and you actually, you know, instead of just arguing all the time and picking and just fighting with everyone, you'd see that daughters actually wouldn't want to spend time with press, seeking out the sleeping forms of her daughters, Davina and Jasmine. Armed with kitchen knives, she unleashed a torrent of brutality upon her unsuspecting victims. The eldest, Davina, was killed first, and her mother stabbed her relentlessly 37 times. During the attack, Davina awoke and tried to protect herself, and forensic analysis revealed traces of defensive wounds on Davina's body. Jasmine, the younger sibling, met a similar fate in her own bed and was stabbed 29 times. After killing the girls, Rekha took a shower, got dressed, and went out twice in her car before ringing a friend who was a special constable and said, "I've done something terrible." In a handwritten note she left at the murder scene, she wrote, "Sorry doesn't mean anything now. I killed my two beautiful daughters. I don't want them to get hurt as I did. Jeff hurt me so much I cannot explain. He found it difficult to compromise at times, but I loved him so much. My kids will not be a burden to anyone anymore." Which is just insane, because her mother obviously has gone through trauma and she's obviously having like some kind of mental, she's obviously struggling, but it's like she's saying that her kids are not going to be a burden to anyone anymore, but her kids were never a burden. I'm sorry, but kids are not a burden. Like, they are not a burden. And as a, like, if you're wanting to be a parent or you have kids, you know they're not a burden. You do anything for them as a parent, especially as a mother. And it's just sad because her daughters had like the whole lives to live. They were so young, and the fact that she classed them with burdens is just horrible. As a mother, like, why would you say something like that? When police arrived at the house, they were shocked by the ferocity of the attacks. They found Davina kneeling on the floor and Jasmine in a bed. Both were dead. Detective Sergeant Jennifer Johnston said the scene was all she could ever think about for a considerable amount of time, and she said that Rekha was very calm. She was not upset, she was not crying, and she was very quiet. She was more concerned that she didn't want it to get in the press what she'd done. And the fact that this constable is literally saying that this scene was that bad, it was permanently engraved in her head, and it took her so long to get over this. So long. Like, that just shows you how horrible that scene was. To see stuff like this a lot, but when they say, you know, on a specific case, they say this sort of thing, you know, it's really, really bad. It's horrendous. When in custody, Rekha told a police officer she did not like the clothes they had provided her with, and that she wanted other clothes fetched from her house. What? Officers reminded her that they could not re-enter the house until the bodies were removed, and she began to cry. Really? So you cry about your clothes, but you don't cry about your followers you brutally murdered and took their lives, and you stabbed them so many times. You don't cry about that, because apparently they were a burden to you, but it's like, you care more about the clothes that you're wearing. Like, I don't understand. It's weird. Later that day, Rekha was interviewed by Dr. Neil Hunt, a consultant psychiatrist. She told him her side of the story. Rekha said that she'd woken up early in the morning and had a drink, went to the bathroom, and then picked up the knives. Dr. Hunt said Rekha told him she went out for a drive after the attack, then returned home and realised she was drenched in blood. She said this was not supposed to happen. I love my girls. Rekha Kumari-Baker's trial lasted 2 weeks, and she admitted manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility, but denied murder. She said that she'd been suffering from a mental disorder and an abnormality of mind, making her guilty of manslaughter but not murder. Psychiatrist Lyle Hamilton, who was called to give evidence by Rekha's lawyers, and medical literature showed that women had killed children because they were mentally ill and because they were relatory type, and that Rekha displayed a unusual behaviour. He said, given the extreme and unusual behaviour, I was concerned that there was a high chance that she may be suffering from a mental disorder. I didn't think she had any serious mental illness. I didn't think there was evidence of any mental illness. The prosecution carried on by stating that Rekha killed the girls as a form of revenge against her ex-husband and father, the girls, David Baker, and that she wanted to wreak havoc on him. They explained how there was much contention between Rekha and her ex-husband over the care and custody of their children. She had also been distressed by the breakup of a relationship with a boyfriend, Jeff Powell. Said that Rekha was a good mother, but her behaviour had become oppressive when he tried to end things between them shortly before the girls' deaths. They also brought forward the teacher who had witnessed Rekha telling her daughter twice, "I wish you were dead," during a meeting in 2004. The court also heard how Rekha had brought the weapons which were used to kill the daughters an hour after taking Jasmine to GP David Dose for a routine appointment. Dr. Dose told the court the concerns had previously been raised about Rekha's mental health, but on that specific day, Rekha seemed to find it had been a light-hearted insultation. Yeah, but the thing is, for mental illness or, any kind of illness, some days people put on an act. Some days people seem fine. You can't always tell that someone's going through stuff because it's in their head. So, just because they seem fine one day does not mean that they're not suffering from a mental illness. Just to base it off that specific day is just a bit bad for saying that, he's a doctor and the other guy's a psychiatrist. It's this is their job and they're clearly not doing enough. Rekha had previously been diagnosed in 2003 as suffering from reactive stress with mild depressive features, but that clinical depression had not been diagnosed and Dr. Dose was unable to find any evidence of mental health problems. The court was told social services had been involved to assess Rekha's home arrangements, but doctors had concluded that she was at low risk of self-harm and that the teenagers had no mental health problems. It was clear to everyone that Rekha knew exactly what she was doing that day. She had premeditated the murders by purchasing the knives, and it only took jurors 35 minutes to deliver their guilty verdict. She cries over, when she's arrested, she cries over the fact that she's wearing different clothes and not her own clothes, but yet she doesn't cry over her daughters and she seems calm. So it is weird. During sentencing, David Baker's victim impact statement misread to the court, and he spoke of the incalculable loss he had suffered. He said having them taken away from me in such a brutal way, and by the woman who was their mother, has had an incalculable effect. I am haunted by the horror of the events of that night, and probably will remain so for a very long time. She tore them from us all, and life can't be the same for those who remain. I have been greatly affected, not only by the fact of my daughter's death, but also by the utterly savage manner by which it occurred. While the statement was being read out, Rekha looked at the ceiling, appearing impatient, and she mouthed the word rubbish at one point, which is why would you say something like that? You have literally affected, this was the father of your children. You've taken away the only daughters he has, his kids. remains a mystery. Your defence of diminished responsibility was flimsy and unsubstantial. You knew quite well what you were doing, and you were not mentally ill. After the verdicts, Detective Inspector Jim McCory said, "It became clear as this investigation progressed that Rekha Kumari-Baker set out to murder her children. Only she will know the reasons why she carried out such a vicious and deliberate attack." As they lay sleeping in their beds, Davina and Jasmine were two innocent young teenagers who were killed by the person they should have been able to trust most in this world. In 25 years in the police service, I have never before investigated such an upsetting or sickening crime. After the hearing, in a statement by David Baker, read by his brother George outside the court, the girl's father said he thought about his daughters every day and all their love and closeness for each other. He said, "Part of my heart was taken when they died, and I long for the day when we shall be reunited. Time has passed since their deaths, but my sense of loss and pain is eased a little. I was robbed of my daughters by an act of calculated viciousness by a woman who, having given them to life in her vindictive mind, believed she also had a right to take that life from them. She will now pay the price for this." Rekha Kumari-Baker was a woman who was angry with her life, angry that her former husband had found new happiness, and angry that her new relationship had failed. Rather than move on with her life, she let her anger overpower her, and she destroyed the lives of two young girls. She is pure evil, and now she has to face the consequences of her actions and be locked away for the majority of her life. My heart goes out to the Baker family and to anyone who is impacted by this terrible crime, and as always, rest in peace, Jasmine and Davina Baker. And that is the end of today's case. I just think it is horrible because I don't care, I'm sorry, but if you hate your ex or your ex-husband or someone that you used to be in a relationship with, yeah, people don't dislike people, but to literally take it out on him by killing her own daughters just to get back at him is disgusting, because it's why? As a mother, all your instincts is just the opposite, the complete opposite. You would never do something like that or dream about that. You never even say something like that. You never say stuff like that, wishing your daughter's dead, because it's just not it's not in mother's a maternal side. It's just not a thing. So I just think it's horrible, and I just hope that David can get some rest now that and just be able to move on with his life, even though he doesn't have his daughters anymore. And I hope that she doesn't get released, because she doesn't deserve another chance at life when she ripped away her own daughter's life and called them a burden. So if